Let me tell you something that's substantive, though. I want to talk about this story right here. The first thing I want to do is show you this clip where I said, holy ish, they want war. They profit from war. Listen to this from Joe Biden.
So I think what you're going to see...
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I get the audio right, because it may be playing properly, but I'm just going to double check our sources real quick, and now I'm going to play it. Okay, here we go.
So I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion, and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc.
It depends on what it does. If it's a minor incursion, yeah, and a lot of people immediately went like, why would you downplay the U.S. response to Russia invading another country in Europe?
Because limited war, baby. Henry Kissinger's let's do proxy wars and take little pieces of this and that. They've segmented it into China, Russia, and the U.S. 3 superpowers get to split the earth amongst them.
You're absolutely correct, Ian.
Well, the British are also on that list.
You're absolutely correct.
They're like limited war. We've accepted it. Final answer.
Elaborate now.
Well, the proxy wars that are happening are very profitable, especially when you have these big major kind of states fighting each other, the West versus the East. And they already happen in Syria. They already happen in Yemen. And if they could advance it towards another place like Ukraine, this only, of course, benefits the military-industrial complex. Now, this could be a two-pronged response here, understanding Biden's statements. One is that he's old, he's senile, he doesn't know what he's talking about. The second one is that he's inviting Russia in because at the long term, this is going to work in favor of the neoconservative, of the deep state, of the military-industrial complex that, of course, is going to be striving for this. But there's two other important pieces of information to consider here. A couple weeks ago, the Biden administration, according to some sources, even went to Ukraine and said, would it be okay if you just give up some of your sovereign land to Russia? So this is something that has already been an underlining policy that has happened before. So that's why I'm also calling bunk on the White House's latest statement, because they just issued a clarification on Biden's statement saying that if Russia invades, of course, there's going to be a swift and severe response. And obviously, they're just trying to cover the bad press and the bad reaction they're getting from this. But geopolitically, the situation is complex. Russia has been moving their troops towards Ukraine. The United States and NATO have been moving their troops towards Russia as well. So the situation is getting tense. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was another proxy war that, of course, is going to be perpetual warfare, as Ian said, the Henry Kissinger doctrine, never-ending war for profit.
Just want to show this CNN headline real quick. Biden predicts Russia will move into Ukraine, but says minor incursion may prompt discussion over consequences. Wow, even CNN couldn't sugarcoat that one.
Although they tried, though.
Right, I know.
That was this is CNN moment. You know, look, I want to agree with something that you said a moment ago about the expansion on the military side. If you went back and listened to Biden's answer, he said, in fact, we're already going to increase the number of troops that we have. He said Poland, and then he also, the other country, I forget the other country he mentioned, but he lists 2 countries, and then he goes, if they go and move into Ukraine and do some different things. But he was already that's the thing that no one's talking about. He already announced U.S. troop expansions into 2 different countries as part of his answer. Like, he's already thought through this. I mean, he definitely has a direction he wants to go. But, you know, one of the points I'd make a little bit of the buried lead on this when we see whether it's Putin or Xi, which I spent a lot of time talking about the CCP and what they're doing around the world. As soon as Biden was declared the winner, that's when these guys started going on offense. And the real reason why we know that I think both Biden and, but Xi and Putin take action is if Biden's the one-term president, they're going to go and make their moves now while he's in, as opposed to waiting till whoever comes next.
Do you remember when Biden was, I think he was at a UN meeting, or was it G7, and he kept saying Libya over and over again instead of Syria? I assure you, Xi and Putin see that, and they look at each other, and, you know, Putin's like, hey, Xi, if we invade Ukraine, he might accidentally invade Libya instead. So, but you think I'm half joking. Imagine if Joe Biden is in the Situation Room and he says directly to his generals, we got to get more troops on the ground in Libya. Get to it. And they're like, sir, do you mean you heard me? And they're like, okay.
He got bin Laden wrong.
Why? But here's the important thing people didn't understand. If the generals hear Joe Biden say Libya and they leave saying, well, we know he really meant Syria, so we'll go with Syria instead. What if he really did mean Libya? If he did mean Syria when he said Libya, and the generals say, your orders, sir, and then they start sending troops to Libya, what? I'm sorry, man. Yeah. I understand that Joe Biden misspoke, but he said Trudon on a Shabbat pressure and Badakef care as well. You got to be very precise when you're talking about missile strikes and nukes and war. And I'm pretty sure Putin, Xi, and even, Kim Jong-un and any one of our adversaries, in Iran and Venezuela are like, there's a good chance that if we invade, Joe Biden will order a missile strike in the wrong country. Let's go for it.
I disagree there because Putin realizes that the president isn't really the president of the United States. He made very important comments a couple years ago, specifically talking about how even presidents change. There's always men in dark suits that implement the same kind of foreign policy that has been, in some ways, always the same for a very long time, for decades now. And it's important to understand, I think he's just a puppet. I think the military-industrial complex knows exactly what they're doing. The language from the Biden administration and intelligence agencies has been concise here, and they said Russia will stage a false flag attack and will launch an invasion of Russia. It's only a matter of time until Russia invades Ukraine. Russia will invade Ukraine. Those are the talking points of the intelligence agency, of the Biden administration, right after the CIA had just had a secret mission in Kiev where he came back from, and this information came out that they're going to do a false flag. And many people are speculating that Kiev gave the head of the CIA this information. The CIA gave it to CNN, and that's why the American public has now regurgitated this information. False flags have always started a lot of world wars and important wars throughout recorded human history. So there's the rhetoric is hot here, and it's pretty crazy.
I don't know if it'll be World War III, but I think I would be willing to bet within this year, Russia invades Ukraine. Joe Biden says something like Trina Shabbat pressure, but it's because there's a plan in action and we don't know what he's muttering about, but we do respond. And this is, I think, because the Democrats are losing. Many are retiring. Joe Biden's approval rating is in the absolute is just destroyed, and they need a distraction. And they need something to try and boost their approval ratings and offer up something.
Now, just really quick, I'm not saying there's going to be a world war, but I'm saying the only thing, as you were saying, I was going to make that point, the only thing that could stop the negative viewpoint of the Biden administration, the poll numbers, is a conflict, is a war. And I don't see it as because there's mutual assured destruction if Russia and the United States fight each other. It's going to be just like Syria. The United States is going to be sending more arms, sending in more military hardware. More U.S. taxpaying dollars will be sent to Ukraine. Russia will, of course, influence that region. They already have been fighting for years now. So it only makes sense that the conflict's escalating and is going to escalate from here.
This is one of the things to remember, the contrast between Biden and Trump, for example, is Biden tonight very much sounded like a U.S. senator. He didn't sound like a president, sounded like a senator. So when he was talking about even their domestic agenda, he's going through, I like this part of the legislation, not that, or I'm going to try to save this part, not the other. He went through and gave this very kind of methodical, that's how he walked himself into the trap, was he tried to nuance and give his answer about, we'll see on the minor incursion, all of that. I mean, obviously we know the last time that Putin went rolling into Ukraine, I mean, he took Crimea back. I mean, so they already have the precedent that Biden's not going to do anything. So I think what happens is Putin definitely goes, I don't think it's a full takeover of Ukraine, but it's enough to rattle the saber, make himself look good at home. Biden says, well, I'm going to give you double, triple secret sanctions. And effectively, then Putin wins the day and Biden looks weak. But I think they know that Biden is, as opposed to Trump, who basically told, obviously with Putin, he took one strategy of kind of doing the buddy routine. With Kim Jong-un, he said, fire and fury will drop the bombs and wipe you off the face of the earth. Guess what? Deterred Kim Jong-un quite a bit.
Absolutely. Ian, you had something to say?
Yeah, this is why I think limited war and not total war. This is the Kissinger limited war doctrine, where they want conflict not in the homeland because you don't want to destroy your own infrastructure, and they don't want to go to nukes with Russia. So they'd like to just military-industrial complex the hell out of Ukraine, buy and sell a lot of weapons, destroy a lot of bombs over cities, and just level. I mean, that's what they did in Vietnam. That was a limited war. They didn't want to go to war with Russia or China.
And this has been building for a very long time, especially with the United States trying to build their sphere of influence, trying to get Ukraine from Russian influence towards a European NATO influence. We saw John McCain in Kiev literally lead the marches down there trying to overthrow their government. There was a very violent revolution that hurt a lot of people. It was all against corruption. The Ukrainian people were dealing with a corrupt government, but they got another corrupt government in response to it with Biden's fingerprints all over it, with his son's business involvements in it, and of course also the president of the United States, Donald Trump at the time, who sent lethal weapons to Ukraine, which was an absolute huge escalation according to Russia. And this is why Russia is pissed off, because they're seeing NATO, they're seeing the U.S. weapons going closer and closer to their border, and they're saying we need to strike back in order to push back against this nonsense. The Secretary of State, even a couple weeks ago, said NATO never agreed not to build up on Russia's border, which is absolutely untrue. There's a lot of documents, there's a lot of agreements between Russia and NATO and the United States saying that the United States won't be building up a lot of their military hardware on there. So this is a very escalating, hot situation that could turn very drastic for the people of Ukraine, which is absolutely sad as these
But isn't it better
politicians just rule lives, which is insane.
I think Trump's strategy with sending weapons to Ukraine was, hey, we're not going to get involved in this conflict. We'll sell you some weapons. It's all on you. Whereas Biden and the neolibs and neocons were setting up, getting Hunter Biden in Burisma, trying to work, energy companies. There's a reason why they want to get Ukraine into, aligned with the Western forces. Trump's attitude was America first. We don't want to be at war with these countries. Here are some weapons. It's your issue.
Yeah, I mean, take a look. I mean, do you think Germany or France or anyone else in NATO was watching Biden tonight? Were they, not laughing or shaking their head and being like, "What the blank is this?"
Or shaking in their boots?
Exactly, or saying this thing, they don't have our back. Bring Trump back. Can we get Trump back in the White House? I mean, that's where that. That Macron, when you have Macron and Johnson, and even though Angela has left, Olaf Scholz, I'm sure they're like, let's get Trump back. At least we knew where that guy stood.
Well, Biden continued Trump's policies of providing lethal weapons to Ukraine. So that also is escalating the situation. It's a very complex situation because we should actually see it from both perspectives. We should see it from the Russian side, from the Ukrainian side, and from the American side, because each side has their own particular version of events. I'm trying to just tell people the version of events how I see it, but again, there's different PR, there's different propaganda from each different side, and it's truly a very dangerous situation that I believe will be a limited war, just like Ian is saying with the Henry Kissinger doctrine. That makes most sense, but even with that, there still is a probability of it escalating and becoming extremely dangerous for everyone else, and that's why war should never be the answer. Diplomacy should be the way to move forward here.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.